surveys from around the world find that males everywhere are reluctant to talk about their mental health and are more likely to die by suicide than females. Apparently, the dominant male notion of being the stronger gender continues to serve as a smokescreen in this respect. The downside is a progressive erosion or chipping away of the men's mental health. But what do we know as we turn to a seasoned professional and founding director of Life After Abuse Foundation, Halima Layeni? She is an incandescent men's mental health advocate, and she's here to discuss the need for the creation of mental health awareness among men and dangers of neglect. Good to have you on Newsday, Halima.
Thank you for having me.
Well, just like I said in the intro, society usually frowns at men being vulnerable. They expect them to be strong at all times. You hear things like be a man, Can you tell us why you're doing this advocacy, for men's mental health and why it is important, why it needs to be done?
First of all, thank you for, shining the spotlight on such an important cause, which is men's mental health. We do believe that men's mental health is an issue that begs attention and is important for us to bring it to the spotlight because it's causing more harm than good to men. We have statistics shows that men are 3 times more likely to die by suicide. Also, there's a mental health gap between awareness around violence against men and violence against women and girls. And while we acknowledge the fact that women and girls should get the help that they need, we do believe that men and boys should not be neglected as well. We have millions of men and boys out there who have been sexually abused. We have men out there who have suffered domestic violence, and there's kind of like some sort of silence around it. And we do believe that, it's important for us to carry everybody along, both genders along in.
So what are the dangers, of actually fostering this culture of silence? If we do not break this culture of silence, what are the dangers ahead?
So we have many men who suffer from depression. We have many men who die in silence, especially boys who have been sexually abused, and men who have suffered domestic violence. Again, we're kind of like, making emphasis on domestic violence because we do believe that there's a good number of men out there who are not actually breaking the silence, but are suffering domestic violence. And bringing these issues to the spotlight normalizes men coming out to seek help. The way it used to be for women to, just come out to talk about their trauma and their abuse and how society would support them. There's kind of like help and support for women and girls, but for men and boys is different. So we believe that it's important for us to bring this into the spotlight so that we can normalize men coming out to seek help. So we can normalize men coming out to talk about their trauma, their abuse. We still have men who come out to say, I have been abused as a child, and we have society shame them. We have men who come out to say, I was, physically abused by my wife or by my partner. And we hear society say, are you not a man? That it's not possible for that to happen. So we do believe that, driving more conversations would enable men and boys gain access to the mental health resources that they need.
So can you tell us some of those mental health resources for men that do come out, to seek help? What kind of help is available, for them to access?
Unfortunately, we have to have this honest conversation. There's little or no help for boys and men, which is what we are trying to advocate for there to be systems and structures in place for men and boys to gain access to medical help, psychological help, and legal support as well. Currently, as we speak, there's no social support center in Lagos, Nigeria, or in Nigeria, as a whole, that provides mental health services specific to boys and men. And LAF is, we do all we can to try to provide men with psychosocial support at LAF. We do it virtually. So we have, men and boys calling, men who have suffered abuse. We have, counselors and social workers who actually offer these services.
So I'm wondering, what role does religion, play in mental health advocacy? because we have people that would prefer to speak to their spiritual leaders. Can it replace medical help in some cases, or should it be complementary, or should religion be totally out of it?
So Africa at large, especially Nigeria, is a highly religious country. Most of our decisions are informed by our religious beliefs. So I do believe that religious leaders play a very key role in advancing men's mental health. And again, I keep saying men's mental health because I do believe that women and girls already have these systems and structures in place for them, but there's nothing for men. So I do believe that religious leaders, one, need to begin to raise awareness on men's mental health. They need to begin to use their platforms to normalize men seeking help. We still have a good number of men who would not come out to say, who die in silence basically, and who would not say, I'm struggling with these, and there's a lot of pressure on men. An average man, is difficult to be an average man. There's a pressure to provide, a pressure to succeed. And then coupled with that, having gone through some sort of abuse and not being able to express yourself, is very difficult. So yes, religious leaders have a key role to play in advancing men's mental health.
So, and I believe, we should all work together. So for the men who are reluctant to come out, are there symptoms that probably maybe their loved ones, their friends, their partners, can watch out for to determine when it's time to maybe intervene, maybe when you notice that somebody is having mental health issues? Are there some symptoms to watch out for?
Yes, there are definitely symptoms. Maybe a man is withdrawn, or is sad. I mean, these things are not difficult to identify. But then again, I think that it's important to state here that when the few courageous men actually come out to tell their stories of abuse or trauma, it is met with judgment and mockery. And I think that as a society, we need to change that. When men come out to share their story on abuse and trauma, it's important for us to hear their stories. It's important for us not to judge them or mock them. And I think that would help more men to, come out to tell their stories.
Well, you just talked about it, the fact that they are judged, they are mocked. So how can we stop this stigmatization, and actually encouragement to seek more help? That's on one hand. Then what about those who say that, this woke generation, that they are promoting weak men, that things that ordinarily you shouldn't lament about. That's what, they actually say that the Gen Zs, they are now known for lamenting and crying over what you would just take in your strides and move on. How would you address those criticisms?
Yes, we have had feedbacks from media saying that we're trying to feminize men, but I do not believe that we are trying to feminize men.
Because I don't think it's the media portraying that narrative.
Well, the media is filled with people. Okay. So we have people, when I say media, I don't mean as an organization, people calling. Okay. And so about that, I do believe that when we begin to normalize these conversations, we're having this conversation, Arise is giving us a platform to speak about these things. When we begin to normalize these conversations, it becomes a normal thing. Remember when, about a decade ago, it used to be like a taboo for women to tell their stories. They'll be shamed and judged. I remember when I came out to tell my story, I was judged and, shamed. But now I stand on platforms to share my story and everyone is and so I do believe that when we begin to, drive more progressive conversations on men's mental health, it would kind of normalize the idea of men seeking help, of men coming out to share their story about abuse and trauma. Also, I do believe that when we begin to provide resources, currently as we speak, I know that there's a lot of conversations about mental health, therapy and all of that. We need to begin to ensure that mental health services are easily accessible to men, and we also need to ensure that mental health services are affordable to men.
So before I let you go, I'm going to ask you to talk about your foundation, Laugh, and as a woman, why are you at the forefront of promoting men's mental health?
Okay, I get this question a lot, but I always tell people, why not men? We're at the age where we're all advocating for gender equality, and gender equality is really about the equality of the sexes. It's not tailored, it's not exclusive to women and girls. And, again, in my work with boys and men, I've come to realize that there are so many broken men out there who are dying in silence. And this in turn is causing a socially unhealthy society for all. We take the US as an example. In 2020, we had over 600 mass shootings in America, all carried out by men. And if you're well traveled, you would know that both men and women have access to guns in the US. So it's not about the men. It's not about the guns as it is about the men. And men are sending us a strong message around the world. When we begin to create a safe and compassionate space for men to, express their emotions, we would have less violence, we'll have less gender-based violence, we'll have less domestic violence, and all of that. So basically, LAF is pretty much at the stage where we're advocating for men and for the rights of men to gain access to free medical, psychological, and legal support. And we do our bid to provide that. Also, we are also working on, establishing the very first mental health support. Yes, in Africa, and we hope that comes on very soon.
Well, I hope so too. Halima Layeni, founding director of Life After Abuse Foundation, LAF. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.
Thank you for having me.